Manual flash. Let's jump ships to the manual flash category. So let's see. In manual, you don't have to think about what the flash is thinking. You can only think about what you're thinking. That's the beauty of it. So for example, in manual flash, the camera's light meter no longer matters. The flash's light meter, there's a light meter right there. The flash's light meter no longer matters. You don't even matter. No, I'm just kidding. You matter. Nothing matters. The flash just says, what do you want me to do? And then you just say, I want you to go this much power. And if it's too bright, oh my goodness, you tell it, go down. And if it's too dark, you say, go up. And that's pretty much, that completes the manual flash section of this course. It's like super simple. Let's do an example. So I'm going to put the flash on manual. And right now, I have the flash at full power. Full power is 1:1, so it's just a full power blast, okay? Because Amanda is going to be working with us the entire day, I prefer not to blind her right away at the beginning of the day, although it would be sort of fun. Maybe we should do that. Let's totally do that. Let's blind her real quick. So full power on the light, and we have a really gorgeous exposure. If you are in Alaska, or you want to remember Alaska, or Siberia, this is going to work for you very well. Joking aside, I use a brighter exposure on my flash whenever I'm shooting somebody that's older and I want to wash out their skin. So if I feel like I'm shooting somebody in their 70s or 80s, I do tell the flash, go a little harder than normal. And then it's going to basically fill up every little crack more than it should, but there's still enough information that you're not blowing out her skin, and you can make her look 10 years younger, okay? So here's why I love flash. That's obviously too bright, and I'm going to tell the flash, go down to 1/8 power, okay? So let's try that again. And now you get pretty much a perfect exposure. And let's take a look at that. Beautiful. Now I'm going to tell the flash, that's cool, but I like it darker. So we're going to go to 1/64th exposure. So I'm just turning down the flash. And then you get this exposure. Cool? Yes, Nikki.
This might be a dumb question, but...
Nothing's dumb.
I know, but are you just shooting head-on the way you are on camera for this purpose of this example? Yeah.
I want to keep it
simple.
Totally.
Normally you wouldn't, but
no.
just
No,
for the,
I would never shoot like this. Oh my gosh. Okay, good point, Nikki, good point. In real life, I'm not shooting. I'm just basically going through the very basics of the two different camps. There is the TTL camp, and there's the manual camp. The TTL camp, the flash thinks for you, and it's going to do everything into middle gray. The manual camp, you just tell the camera what you want. Let's say you want to expose for the curtain. I just did that with this picture. But let's say you want to expose for her more. You can just say, hey, turn up the power and then put more light on her and so forth. Okay. This next section, if you're at home and you're watching, you might want to write this down, because if you miss this, you might be confused from now on. In manual flash, there are 4 things that affect exposure on manual flash. Do you guys know what those are by any chance? Mark, or Joshua?
Aperture, your ISO, flash power, and flash zoom, maybe?
The distance.
Distance, that's even more
okay,
obvious.
The distance. Okay, so let me repeat what he just said. When you are on manual flash, there are 4 things that will affect how much power you probably want to put in your flash, okay? The first one is the light output of this is never going to change. So, Amanda, come this way for a second, please. This is really important. I'm going to slow down on this because I want to take my time on these 4. The reason why you need to understand these 4 is because these 4 do not apply on TTL flash at all. And that's where people get confused. Okay? So, and I know there's different levels, and I know some people know this really well and some people don't. We're just going to go through it. This flash on manual, the power of this flash, I basically control. I tell this flash, I want you to fire at this power setting. If she's this close to me, she's going to receive whatever power I put in the flash. If she's too close for that power, it's going to be too bright. If she's too far away, it's going to be too dark. So let's try it. I'm at 1/64th flash right now. I'm going to change it to 1/16th, just as a reference, as a starting point. Okay? Starting point, step 1, starting point, 1/16th. When I'm teaching classes, people always ask me, what is your starting point for Speedlites? It's pretty much 1/16th. It's kind of my starting point. No reason why. Okay, I'm going to be this close to Amanda here. And then take a look at the photo that I got. She looks like she's 12 years old. Very nice, you have no wrinkles in your skin at all. Congratulations, what do you eat for breakfast? Great. So we're talking about how distance affects the effects, right? In manual flash, if she gets farther away, the flash output is not going to change because the flash is not thinking. The flash is just saying, you do your thing, I'll just fire whatever you say. So the first variable in manual flash is the distance between her and me, your subject and the flash. So let's go ahead and go farther out and stop. Come this way, stop. Now, I'm not going to change the power. I'm not going to change anything. And she's going to receive a better exposure. Okay? So, now we have this kind of look. Okay? So nothing changed other than one variable. Remember, there's 4 variables. We're talking about just one. We're talking about distance variable. Now, Amanda, can you go twice as far from me?
Roberto?
Yes.
And while you're doing that, can you take us back and just tell us again, not your flash settings, but what's your ISO, what's your shutter speed, where are you starting there in this scenario? And how does that relate? Well, maybe not how does it relate, but what are you on?
Is that somebody's question?
Yes.
Okay. If you're asking that, I actually cannot answer that right now because then I get into other variables.
Okay.
So I will totally cover everything, but I got to do one by one so it's super clear. Okay. Right now, we're dealing with one variable. All you should be focusing on right now, if you're watching, is the farther away she is, clearly she's going to receive less light. And yesterday we discussed the inverse square law of light. Remember, the inverse square law of light says that if you have your, let me put this down, probably not this way. If you have your light source here and you have your subject here, right? Your subject is going to receive the full blast of the light. But as your subject starts to go away from the light source, the light is just going to drop exponentially, right? And it's going to drop so much that it's, never mind the formula, but just remember, it happens very quickly. It's 1 over the distance squared, but who cares? It drops, the exposure drops very quickly, and then it starts to taper down, taper down, taper down, taper down. That is the same for flash as it is for windows, as it is for video lights, as it is for everything light in the world. That's why when she's going farther away, she's receiving less light, because less light rays are hitting her, right? So let's try this one. Okay, and now we have, compare this one to this exposure. Great. Why is this important? It's important because you can now gauge, for example, if it's too dark, if you want your subject to be where she is, all you have to do is tell the flash, I don't like this exposure, it's a little dark on her for me, so I want to go just a little bit brighter. So I say, okay, a little bit brighter. What is the fastest way to get her a little bit brighter? Just move a little bit this way, a little more, and stop. Now we'll shoot her this way. And I say, okay, let's check it out now. And it's going to be pretty much right where you want it. So perfect. Okay? So that's it. Variable 1 on manual flash is the distance between your subject and the light. The closer she is, the more light she'll receive. The farther away she is, the less light she'll receive. Inverse square law of light again. Any questions on the distance part? Cool. Yes.
So would it be safe to say that the general rule of thumb is 6 to 8 feet away? That's always what I was told.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay.
That's right. I think the more you try this stuff, you will have kind of like a gauge. Like you will have like an anchor point. Like if she's this far away from me, that's probably going to be 1/16. And usually when I'm shooting pictures, this is about the distance that I would probably shoot in. So it's 1/16 is a good starting point. Okay. Variable number 2 is the power of the flash can be changed. So you can keep her where she is, and you can change the power of the actual unit. So for example, we're going to change the light exposure on her, but we're not going to move her anymore. We're going to just change the power here. So let's try that. We're going to go to full power. Sorry. Full power flash. And you get this again. Now we're going to have Amanda stay in the same exact place. Beautiful. Siberia, Alaska. Okay? Now we're going to just basically grab this exposure. We're not going to change how much light hits her by moving her. We're only going to do it by changing the power of the unit. So now I'm going to grab my flash, and I'm going to change it to 1/8. Let's try that. Okay, so I just basically lower the power by like 3 stops. Okay, so she gets this now. If you're not satisfied with this, if you think it's too bright, now you have 2 choices to your collection of tools. What are the 2 choices we've discussed? Distance, and you can change the power. So that's step 2. We're going to just change the power. We're going to go to 1/32. Oops, that was way too dark. So we're going to put that up, and I say, okay, I made a mistake. I'm going to go to 1/16, okay? And I'm happy with that exposure. And this time, she did not move at all. So if you have clients that don't want to move, choose option 2. Change the power of your flash instead of telling them to move. If you're trying to take a photo of somebody, a cool photo of somebody in a bar, something moody, and you cannot move the bar, obviously, that's an option for you. Change the power of the flash instead. Cool? Third option, we're going to change the ISO of the camera. That's going to change how much light reaches her as well. So we're going to start. Okay, this time we're not changing the power of the flash, and we're not changing the distance where she's standing. Cool? This time we're only going to change the ISO of the camera. The ISO makes the sensor more sensitive to light. So with the same light output, the camera can be super sensitive to it, or it can be not sensitive at all. So we're going to make the camera not sensitive at all right now. We're going to go to ISO 200. So that's where I talk about the settings. Sorry. So I'm going to go to ISO 200, and let's see where this is at. It's where we left off, right? So we're back to where we left off. There she is. Now we're going to go to we're going to change let's say you say, you know what, this is good, but I want more power, okay? Instead of changing the power of the flash or making her move, we are now going to choose option 3, which is change the ISO of the camera. So we're going to go to ISO 400. This will be twice as bright now. Okay, this is twice as bright as before. Cool? Now we say, okay, I really like to go to Siberia, so let's go a little brighter. So we're going to go to ISO 800 now, and let's see what happens now. Great. And you can keep doing this until you're satisfied with your exposure. So that's another option for you, is change the ISO. The last option is my all-time favorite option. It's the aperture option. The aperture option to me is my favorite because it's probably the fastest, okay? So let me explain. The aperture of the camera, this is where it gets all crazy. The aperture of the camera is the hole that opens up in the, when the camera takes a picture, it opens up the aperture, and it opens up this big hole, and it lets light in. The light from the flash is just going to squeeze through that hole, and it's going to give you whatever output the combination of those two things are. So for example, if we make the hole of the lens and the camera, like the aperture, tiny, 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 when you flash this, the flash is going to hit her, come back, and it just won't be able to, it's such a small little hole, it won't be able to expose for her properly. It will be too dark. So we're going to say to the flash, I'm going to keep it at 1, let me see here. Let me give an example. I'm going to change the flash power to 1/4 power, okay? Let me show you this. I'm going to go back to ISO 200. I'm going to take a picture, and she's going to look pretty good because that's where we started before, or a little bright. Okay. No, I'm going to change the flash. I'm going to change the flash, sorry. I'm going to change the flash to low power. Sorry, I'm going to change it to full power. I'm going to go to full power flash, okay? So I'm at ISO 200. I'm at aperture f4. Actually, I'm going to go to aperture 2.8. And let's see what that looks like. Okay. At 2.8, it's really nice. It's like my first year pictures. At 2.8, the whole of the lens is at its widest. So it's allowing the most amount of light into the lens. This is a 2.8 lens. So I put it at 2.8. You can see that the flash output is just crazy. The camera is the hole is so big, it let too much light in, okay? The reason why aperture is my favorite light changing tool for flash is because it's the fastest to change. Yes, like for example, if I'm shooting something and I'm telling them, I'm shooting like a fashion shoot or a couple or whatever, and I'm telling them to move and I get a beautiful expression, but the flash is too hard, I simply turn the wheel and I change it from 2.8 to f4 or from f4 to f8. And all I have to do is go, just like spin the wheel and the flash gets lowered. So it's a matter of efficiency. So let me show you. I'm at 2.8 now, and then I'm going to say, whoa, 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 that crazy thing is too bright, and I'm going to just quickly go to f8. And then I'm going to see what it looks like. Better, right? See how fast that was? I didn't have to go to the flash, push the exposure button, change the power. I didn't have to go to the ISO button, change the ISO. I didn't have to tell her to move up and down. I just went to the fourth option. I said, just change the aperture real quick. I want to show you something kind of fun. I'm going to go to aperture 2.8 again. I'm going to take a picture real quick. Let's say this is a real job, and I'm shooting for real, and I'm like, okay, I'm taking a picture. I see this, and I go, whoa, that's crazy. Now count how many seconds it takes me to go from this to a perfect exposure. Ready? Start to count. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3 now. Boom. So it took me about, I don't know, not that one obviously. Let's see. See how fast that was? Now let's see what happens if you try to do it through the, like changing the flash power or whatever. It's just, let's not even do that, but it's just too much time. Okay? Any questions on those 4 things that affect how much of the flashlight hits your sensor? No. Yes.
We start by just reviewing them again.
Yes, we'll do that. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right.
Great.
Let's see. So people were asking again, now that you've gone through those 4.
Yeah, the 4.
So Pauline Zonnevel, Roberto put the flash in manual. Is his camera in manual as well? Mm-hmm. And then similarly, Jane Ames had said, I think the question is, do you set your camera to a reasonable exposure before then using the flash? So again, what is that starting exposure?
The second question is going to be more a segment 3 situation.
Okay. Bringing it all together.
Well, I can answer it. The problem with flash is that if you don't separate it this way, if you start to try to mix everything together, it starts to get complicated. It starts to be like, what was that again? What you need to remember right now is there's 2 camps. Camp 1, TTL, the flash thinks everything for you, and it tries to mix everything that it sees into a middle gray. Bright, dark, whatever it sees, it will just be mixed into a middle gray. If whatever it sees is too bright, then the camera will say, it's too bright, I don't have to put any light, so just fire, and it's going to be a middle gray. If what it sees is way, way, way too dark, it's going to say, okay, we have a really dark scene, I need to put a lot of flashlight in it in order that when I mix it, it will become middle gray. That's camp 1. Camp 2 is manual flash. Manual flash is the camera thinks nothing, you do all the thinking for it, and it's actually extremely predictable. You tell it what you want, you know what you're going to get, and it will never change unless you change the settings, okay? When you are in camp 2, the manual camp, you have to keep track of 4 different ways you can change the light output. Is this getting crazy? No. Okay, 4 different ways. The first way was you can change the distance between your subject and the light. If she gets closer to you, she's probably going to receive more light. If she gets farther away from you, she's going to receive less light. That's it. So if you can or you want to choose that option, your subjects have to be moving back and forth in order to accommodate for your flash. Okay? So you keep your flash in one setting. You don't change it from that setting. So let's say I'm going to go to 1/16, okay? I'm at 1/16 on my flash. I'm just going to keep it there. I'm going to keep it at 1/16. My shutter speed is 180. My aperture right now is 2.8. Let's start with those settings. So I'm in the middle of a photo shoot. My head is thinking, step 1, my camera is on manual, so I can control everything. Step 2, my flash is on manual too. Okay, so also on manual. I control the entire exposure. Then my brain thinks, step 2, okay, Roberto, you have 4 options to choose on how much flash is going to reach your subject. You have 4 options. Option 1, you can move the subject closer or farther away until the exposure at this exact flash setting looks good. So, come this way one more time. Just gonna go through this really fast. Closer to me, closer to me, closer to me, keep coming closer. Just kidding, just kidding. Okay, it's gonna be like this, and I'm gonna say, I'm not gonna change the flash output, I'm just gonna leave it at this distance. Okay, and then my brain says, okay, Roberto, great, you chose choice 1, move your subject close to you. Obviously that was a terrible choice. Let's move her farther away so she gets the proper light. We're not changing the ISO here, we're not changing the aperture, we're not changing the power of the flash, we're just going to change the distance between her and me. Okay, go farther away, please. Farther, 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 and farther. Please, see you later, take care. Okay, now let's try this. And now the camera's now she's receiving a tiny little bit of light that she used to receive. And then I say, okay, that's good. It's a little dark for me. Let's get her a little more light on her. Take 2 steps closer to me, because it's almost there. 1, 2, right there. Stay right there. Let me see. And you take the picture, and then you say, okay, I love it now. It's perfect. Perfect. Cool? Choice 1. What was choice 2? Did I say ISO? Was that choice 3?
Flash power.
Flash power. Okay, flash power. Come back this way. Please, Amanda. Okay. Come way. Okay, right here. Closer. Great. We're starting there. We are now going to, actually, further away, right there. Let's say this is your subject, you are shooting, and you decide to go with choice 2. I'm going to keep everything the same, ISO 200, aperture 2.8, manual camera settings, manual flash. Option 2 will be, I'm not going to move her anymore. I'm just going to change the power of the flash. So, you start out at 1/16th, and let's see how this goes. Okay, so now if you're watching online, or you guys, all you're doing is changing the power of the flash. This is really easy. What do? Turn it down. That's why manual flash is so simple, okay? So I'm going to push the exposure button, and I'm going to change it from 1/16th to 1/64th. Then I'm going to take a picture again. And let's see how this goes. Okay, good. Her skin looks a little washed out, right? But it's looking better. So I'm going to grab my flash exposure, and I'm going to turn it down a little bit more. Cool. And now I feel pretty happy with that. You guys feel good about that one? Good. The next one is ISO. So we're going to change the ISO. Okay, let's try that again. Stay right there. I'm going to go back to my starting point of 1/16th, so we can go back to where we started. Okay, 1/16th. This time, I'm not going to move her farther or closer to me. I'm not going to change the flash power I'm not going to change the power of this. I'm not going to change anything. I'm just going to change the ISO, okay? All right, let's try this again. Okay. Actually, hold on a second. Okay, let me try this again. I'm just going to change the ISO. Let's see what that looks like. It's pretty good. Let's say you're shooting an older person and you say, no, I want it to be a little brighter. So then you're going to change the ISO sensitivity from 200 to 400. So I'm going to go to 400. And now it's going to be twice as sensitive, which in other words, the same amount of light is going to be brighter now. It's going to look a lot brighter. And then you decide if that's what you want or not, okay? And then the last one is the aperture. So I'm at 2.8. My flash power is 1/64th, like I just did for that picture. And I'm just going to change the aperture. So I'm at 2.8. I'm going to go to 5.6. I'm basically making the hole from this big to a lot smaller, and less light gets in there. Okay, that's good. Now I'm going to change the aperture from 5.6, and I'm going to make her totally dark. Let's say you want like a silhouette or something. 5.6, and I'm going to go to 1/16th. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, very nice. So now you can see the outside light and all this stuff. She's totally dark. And that's when you decide, okay, that's not working at all. So any questions on those 4 things that happen? It's really important that everyone understands that those 4 choices are your choices to control how much light hits your subject when you're using speedlights. This happens whether you're using 1 speedlight or 5 speedlights or 3 speedlights. If you understand those concepts really well, flash shouldn't be a problem for you at all. It should be pretty simple, okay? Let me take a pause and get some questions, because then I want to say something that can...
Okay, well, I actually had a question, since we only have 45 minutes left and a lot to get through.
Yeah.
Somebody had asked Jenny Glides Photography about, does the zoom on the flash head change the output of the flash as well? And I see in your keynote that was your next topic.
Oh, yep. You have my keynote right there, too?
I do, yeah.
When you zoom the flash head, these flashes are, you can zoom the flash head out, you can zoom the flash head in, you can focus the beam of light. You're not really changing the output of the light, but you are focusing it. Does that make sense? So it's like the sun coming in, and then you put a magnifying glass. And then the magnifying glass basically magnifies the same light that was already there. It just makes it stronger because it's magnifying it. So the answer to that is, you're not really changing that original output. you're just changing the way it comes out. You're changing it from a wide beam to a very narrow beam, which obviously makes the light more concentrated. So that's kind of why that is. So, okay. This next section can be a little tricky. So if you remember what I said about TTL and manual, TTL, the flash will look at your camera settings and adjust to get middle gray. Manual will not look at anything. It will just shoot whatever it says. That means, this is where people get super confused with speedlights. That means that if you are on TTL, this happens all the time. I'm teaching a class, people are on TTL, the flash exposure is not good, and they change the ISO. And then you're thinking online, well, what's wrong with that? You just said that that's one of the 4 possibilities. Yes, on manual. But if you tell the camera, you do all the thinking for me, the camera's going to say, okay, cool, I got it, you go away. I'll look at everything you said, and I'm going to give you a proper exposure no matter what you said. So let me show you an example of that. Can you stand right over there, please? Farther away, farther, right there, right there. Okay, I'm going to choose some crazy exposures on my camera. I don't care, and the camera's going to be, whoa, you're crazy, but that's okay, I got it. And I'm just going to give you a good exposure anyway, okay? So I'm going to go to F11, a tiny, 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 tiny little hole. So hardly any light is going to be able to get through. So my poor flash just saw my 11. It's having a little bit of a heart attack. As it sees my F11, it says, that's a really small hole, Roberto. That's really not friendly of you. But I'm going to give it all my power to get through that little hole and give you good exposure, okay? My shutter speed is at 1/25th of a second, and my ISO is 400. So watch. In other words, no matter what you put in, it's going to give you good exposure. So that's it. Except that white, shoot, that white thing is going to kill me. Okay, let's try it. Yeah, that white thing is killing me. Oh, sorry, that was still on manual. Sorry. See, you need to know your equipment. Okay, remember to know your equipment, people. Okay. Even though we're shooting in front of a window, which is going to make it think it's too bright, the exposure looks good, right? Now watch this. I'm going to go from F11, a tiny little hole, and I'm just going to open it to F4. In manual, that would be like crazy change, and it will be a lot of light. You go from a tiny little hole to a really big hole, a lot of light gets in there. In TTL, it doesn't matter what you put, it's just going to give you the same exposure. Awesome, and look, it's the same exposure again. Doesn't matter what you do. Cool? Now I'm going to change my ISO from 400, and I'm going to choose something totally stupid, like, give me an ISO that's ridiculous. I don't know, just, okay, 1600. Okay, ISO 1600, making the sensor super, super, super sensitive to light. The flash is going to be like, okay, super sensitive, I'm going to give you very little power, and it's going to look exactly the same as the last picture. On her, of course, or close to the same. Pretty close to the same. 1600 is very sensitive, so it's going to be a little bit brighter, but it's trying to give you a normal exposure. So, can you get closer to me again? Right there. Okay, she's close to me. I'm going to take a picture again, and it's going to give me a good exposure again. And it's going to look like a fine exposure. It works, right? Can you go far, far away, all the way to the door area? Okay, good. And it's going to give you a good exposure again. Cool. Is there any confusion at all, Kenna, that people are talking about? Why this is not changing? You guys understand why this is not changing anything, right? Okay. The point is, when the flash is doing all the thinking in TTL, it looks at your camera settings and it makes the proper decisions to get you good exposure no matter what your settings are. When she gets closer, the flash realizes she's closer. When she gets farther away, the flash realizes she's farther away. When my ISO changes to something crazy like 1600, the camera says, whoa, that's really crazy, I'm gonna lower the power. So if I change my aperture from f4 to f16 to f22, the camera will say, okay, I'm just going to adjust according to whatever the settings were. And that is pretty much the two camps between TTL and manual. So if you try to change the output and you're on TTL by having your subject get closer, you're not going to succeed, because those things that I said were only for manual flash. Okay? All right.